What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Essential Scares podcast, the only show that dares to ask the question, is it essential? I am your host, Corbin, and with me today is Bobby.
And with your spirit.
Alan.
And also with you. The old translation.
He hasn't been here. He hasn't gone.
Oh, man, we have got quite a show for you today. We are going to be discussing the newest limited series by Mike Flanagan, Midnight Mass. But before we get into it, Bobby has a spoiler warning.
I do. This will serve as your first one and only spoiler warning for the 8-hour series, Midnight Mass. If you don't want it spoiled for you, just go to the time code ahead for our essential spoil-free discussion. 3 noted good Catholic boys are about to struggle with the message of this movie as well as its religious themes. This one's going to be a doozy, folks. Anybody?
It will be a doozy, right? So,
Make me woozy.
I think that the first thing probably that struck me watching this show, as a Catholic, and we've all mentioned this on many other times, if this is your first episode, yes, hello, is how accurate the mass sequences are, for the most part.
That first one that we saw, yeah. I was mouthing the words along because I've heard them so many times, and it's exactly correct. You're right, it's perfect.
I'm pretty sure this can count as me saying I went to church, so when my grandmother asks me next, I'd be like, yeah, sure, Grandma, this year.
Have you been to church lately? Yeah, 2 weeks ago, in fact.
Well, I experienced Ash Wednesday just yesterday.
And I think that, there's a moment that happens pretty early on where they ask Father John, who has come in to replace Monsignor Pruitt, why he used the old translation. And I think that this is multifaceted. First of all, I think it's definitely because it's trying to set up Father John as being arrogant of his position within the church. But also, I think that it is there to pull in people who might be a little bit lapsed. They retranslated the Mass, about 10 years ago. And Alan, of course, he still knows all the words from the old one, right? Every Mass sequence is the old translation. There's no current translations in the show. And I think that some of that is because, the director is lapsed or currently atheist or, whatever his specific beliefs are. He doesn't prescribe to being Catholic, and it's interesting because the show is very Catholic most of the time.
Yeah,
it's very surprising to me.
Oh, I think it's, what this reminds me of? It reminds me of there's this John Mulaney bit where John Mulaney talks about how I can make fun of my grandma for being a devoted Catholic, but if Richard Dawkins then says, "That's my fucking Nana," like that type of thing.
Yeah,
that's because it really does just getting into again, we're 3 good Catholic boys. It's been mentioned twice already, so I might as well be the third one to bring it up again. That there is a weird. There's many faceted within a Catholic person or a religious person, especially when it comes to Christianity, where there are good people who truly believe in the goodness of it. And then there are Bev Keens. And there's a lot of Bev Keens. And
for sure.
People who follow Bev Keen, it can be they pretend that they're good, kind people, but they're some of the worst, most fucking awful, judgmental pricks. Just period. And I think like you said, not even just the Mass itself, but the honesty of Catholics.
Yeah.
For sure. I find it, yeah.
Well, and they really hit on that too when they talk about, Mass being empty for everyday Mass. We only see people, twice a year on Easter and Christmas. These are very much so things that I don't know if it's the same in other faiths, because obviously I'm a Catholic, as we've now established on the show. I don't know if that's I know, right? I don't know if that's a big thing with other sects of Christianity. I have no clue. My inclination is yes, but it rings home in the most true way.
Yeah. I thought that was kind of an interesting conversation for them to be having in the show, because they established really early on that the island has a very small population, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they established very early on that the majority of the island is Catholic. And so with those two things being established quickly, there is this potential error, especially knowing that it's horror, for folk horror to come into play. And they kind of sidestep that and tell you pretty quickly that that's not really going to happen by establishing after that even though everybody who is religious for the most part is Catholic, everybody's just priesters. They're not even going. And it's kind of it is an honest way to look at it.
Show up on Sunday, because
some people do, yeah.
Yeah, more people show up on Sunday than show up for the daily mass, but the daily mass is almost exclusively what's her face, and
it's Bev, Liza, and one other, and I think, isn't it Riley's mom? Is that the other character that was there?
I thought it was what's his face, the guy with the long hair and the beard, who's not the alcoholic.
Something
Sturge.
With an S. Sturge, yes.
Yeah, true.
I think he was one of the first to start showing up, because we see that sequence of the morning mass, or just the daily mass, a few times in the earlier episodes.
Yeah. As
the wildness of the show starts to unravel itself.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we want to start delving into what this show is?
Yeah. So I viewed this basically as a big movie. I think that we all probably did. Let's start kind of from the beginning and talk about Riley. I think that the show can be discussed basically by discussing the 5 main characters.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Riley. Riley is sort of a stand-in for Mike Flanagan at times, because he is lapsed in his religion, and he's a recovering alcoholic. And he was surprisingly good, I think. Even though I've seen a lot of Flanagan's other stuff, and it is usually drama first, and there's usually conversations about grief and family issues and stuff like that. I was surprised at how well done and empathetic the AA scenes were. It felt more real, I think, than I was expecting, even seeing his previous work.
Yeah, I don't work in AA, but working in group counseling is part of what I do for my day job. And sometimes court mandated group counseling. There is that first where he's in a big group of people on the mainland and all that stuff. All of a sudden it becomes and how he's awkward, comfortable, not want to talk. He's just trying to get his paperwork signed so he can get out. I understand that. And then the more intimate setting, how they can kind of have these really real conversations if they open up a program can be very good. And the discussions of faith too. I agree. It was very well done. I feel Riley's character felt very just very you could tell who he was. He was somebody who used to be somebody who thought he was going to be somebody, and now he has fallen on the hardest of times. Alcohol often does to people, especially if you kill a fucking teenage girl.
Yeah.
It's what happened. If you're watching this despite spoiler warning. Yeah.
It's literally the first thing that happens. So the very beginning of the show.
Is Riley the first character to have a true monologue? Or is it maybe Pruitt? I don't remember.
I don't remember. I don't think it matters, but where are you going?
Well,
where are you going with that?
That's a key component of the entirety of this show. Is
those
those
homilies,
and that's
basically.
Yes.
Yes, that's yes.
What? In a movie like this?
Yeah, right.
Or show?
I found them. This is, I think, where my one kind of bigger criticism of the show kind of comes in, is I think they got a little heavy. Not in terms of, well, message was heavy, but that was intentional. But there was just a lot of them, like noticeably so, compared to just about anything else I've ever watched. And I've never watched anything else from Mike Flanagan. This is my first ever experience with his work.
It's not
so I don't know if
like
this is
that.
just okay.
Bobby, you too. This is your first.
Yeah, this is my first. I haven't watched the other two series. I might have seen stuff before that, but it's not stuff that I would know to put his name to.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it just, I don't know, those kind of didn't exactly click with me over time, because they were, padded is not the right word, but
I think they were absolutely intentional. Like it's the pulpit. Like that's like the whole.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that the fact that every character does it is also intentional, because even though the show is very multi perspectived. I don't know. That's definitely not like the right way to say that, but there's a lot of perspectives in the show, and it kind of tries at various points to say either that they're all valid, or that depending on your own personal beliefs, that even though some people may not say it or believe it, like it still lines up with you. But I think the fact that every character has those like speeches, those homilies, as well as the priest, is very intentional.
Yeah,
I liked it a lot. I actually was not. I never thought that the monologues were overbearing.
I guess I want to talk about Riley, and then I want to also get into Aaron. Because specifically, I do want to talk about like the couch scene.
Yeah,
the scene about it's like that was
that's one of the first big. Yeah.
Aaron is the other. She's like the other main characters. Her whole thing was she left home when she was 16. She's recently come back to the island to teach after traveling the world. She's pregnant. Or pretty early into the show, it's discovered that her baby has just simply vanished.
Mm-hmm.
That there was a miscarriage, and that they don't know what happened. It was there's no sign that there ever even was a baby in her, right? And she was fairly pregnant.
Yeah.
And her and Riley, who are both struggling with mourning deaths. Mm-hmm. Riley's still mourning the death that he caused, and Aaron mourning the death of her unborn child. They have a conversation about what happens when we die. Mm-hmm. And Riley being an atheist, or at least agnostic, and Aaron being a mourning, sort of Catholic woman, give very two different
perspectives.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of which it's very interesting to see how they both kind of see the other side of it by the end, by both of their end.
Yeah.
And they kind of synthesize both. I just want to talk a bit about that. What did you guys think about? Like it's one of the heavy bits, but like I thought it was one of the most. It struck with me.
Yeah,
personally,
for sure it did. Yeah, I mean, for me, definitely, right? I mean, I think everybody's had those conversations at some point, I think that if you are someone who has thought about your faith or lack of it or whatever at any point, a big part of their conversation is about why. And I mean, that is a core part of faith, right? It's like, well, why and when and how, right? Of death and after death. And I think that that scene in particular, I think it was key that they had Riley's perspective be as poignant as it was. I think that the show at several times wants you to I think it wants you to lean towards that direction or somewhere in between, you know?
Yeah.
I think that reason why it gives you those two perspectives the first time and then at the end kind of gives you this like pseudo middle ground is very intentional. But I mean, for me personally, Aaron's perspective, of course, was something that struck with me a lot, not only as a Catholic, but as someone who's went through that very recently.
Yeah.
So that was, I mean, it was powerful, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's fucking like, and even with Riley's perspective, there's almost a certain level of spirituality to it.
I was gonna say that. Yep.
Yeah.
Like it isn't it like he doesn't talk about like you have these conversations with people and somebody who has maybe a more
staunchly atheistic. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, no, when you're dead, you're just it's done. You don't feel it's just you're just done. And him being like, you know, you get to experience life 1,000,000 times over 5 seconds it takes for your brain to shut up. You'll never know that you were never alive or that your life was over because you'll be constantly in this state of dreaming and like this high that will last forever. And then you'll be gone. And you'll like, and obviously, right, Aaron's is very, it's just very comforting.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
I think it's the version of heaven that most religious people would like to believe is
is
the
one that you're
the truth of
get.
it. Yeah.
And so you have this really nice moment, and it almost makes you like their relationship is so real because there's just this lingering like I have loved you, I've always loved you, and I always will type thing that like in like they never even really get to experience what that could have been for them.
Yeah.
But they get to have this powerful moment. I don't know. Like, I don't know. Al, what did you think?
I think that because Riley explains his perspective first, correct?
He does.
I think that
Speaking for
is
myself.
incredibly important.
Yeah.
Because she just went through the loss of her child. I mean, I think it's very intentionally done so that his perspective of this kind of spiritualistic atheist thought on what death actually is like, I think that the right timeline of this film or show goes with that one first because it's so heavy on actual spirituality, like, you know, real religious themes. It's giving that thought process the same level of attention as the very religious forefront message is intentional and smart, because it's one of those things where, you know, this is going to get a little more down the faith hole. We were going to have to go down this road.
Yeah.
Being able to take that actual leap of faith, literally, that Aaron has is, I mean, still hard for plenty of people to do.
For sure.
Speaking from my own experience, that's something as I became older, I've always been like, I don't know how much I can square that logic in my own head as I get older.
Sure.
So I find myself sympathizing with the thought process of Riley, but still thinking,
but surely.
But exactly, like, but what if, you know, like, what is the real end here?
Yeah.
And I think having,
sorry, go ahead.
I think having Aaron be that, but here's the hopeful path as the finishing segment there, it just ties that whole scene into, I think, if not the best like sequence in the entire show, one of the best. I mean, that chunk of, I mean, that's some like just really good everything that you see there. Acting, messaging, everything. It's really well done.
I'll fully admit that the character I attached on to was Aaron. Like that was like, because Aaron is the type of like, there are people who are so blindly devoted by faith. And like, this is like, no, it is this way, right?
Yep.
There are people who have been totally disillusioned by faith. And then there are the people who make the choice. And that like, that's what it is. Like the reality is I'm sure all of us in this chat and probably plenty of us who are listening right now have those same like this doesn't make sense, right? They talk like, what is it, theocracy, the idea of like how can a loving God exist in a world with pain.
Sheriff Hassan has a whole monologue about that,
Yeah.
which might have been the most personally identifiable moment for me in the show. Yeah,
but like that, there is that thing that it becomes hard to square away, right?
Yeah.
But again, what Aaron does and what a lot of characters don't do, but what I also choose to do, is to make that choice of it being like, maybe it doesn't make sense, but like, there's no answers to this question. Like even in a cold universe, it doesn't change that this is like a tragedy, right? Like nothing, like, so like what harm does it cause for me to believe that that person at least gets to have some sort of peace and comfort wherever they go next?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of what I get with Aaron. Is Aaron's like, they, Littlefoot, they never got a chance to live, so they just were sleeping, so now they get to, like, and it's like this very beautiful little like moment of being like, this is what I choose to believe.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is more than anything else. And then skipping way ahead to, well, we can do that later.
I think it's
but for both of them, they both have moments,
they do.
Right? Riley. Okay, so big spoiler thing, right? It's vampires. It's vampires the whole time. Father Paul's actually Father Pruitt, and he brought a vampire with him, and now he's basically poisoning the entire congregation with vampire blood. And Riley finds the head vampire, gets turned into a vampire, and basically goes and tells Aaron everything that's going on while they're out on a boat, so that he has nowhere to run to. So because he's basically committing suicide because he hasn't become a vampire. And the sun comes up, and this entire time Riley's been haunted by this, like, the corpse of the person that he killed. And the girl's there, but she's not hurt. She's okay. And she's like, basically there's this non-communicated forgiveness as he gets to go up, and then it flashes back to the conscious reality, and he is fucking melting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
that is such a powerful scene.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Ugh.
Well, because it's the same thing, right? It's Aaron's version, right?
Exactly.
She has to experience what's actually happening, but whether it's his conscious mind shutting down, or he's going wherever we go next, right? He's going to heaven or hell or wherever. Yeah. By this act of noble sacrifice, this martyrdom, really.
Yeah.
Like, it leaves the question mark open. And the same thing happens with Aaron, where Aaron actually gets basically allows the head vampire to try to, like, suck her dry. Yeah. And while she's doing it, she's having this entire monologue about how, like, when we think about faith, we think about us becoming one with the earth again, the earth using us and living a million lives and never dying, constantly are being used and reused and things like that. And the entire time she's cutting holes in the head
she's
vampire,
clipping his wings.
Yep, exactly.
I thought it was interesting that she has that monologue at the end. Only because I think that the show as a whole works its way there in a lot of ways, but I don't know that she works her way there to that middle ground, as a character.
I don't think I didn't.
It didn't feel like out of place necessarily. Like, it feels almost meta. Like, okay, is this just like, is she just taking the place, like, for the show as a whole? But
because I don't think she necessarily is saying that, like, she doesn't believe that there isn't an afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
I get more so the sense that she, like, as she is dying, and she's like it's more so a greater understanding of what life and death really are. Is that there is, like, there is no death. There is no death. There's only more life. And like, I think for a lot of us, that's actually what we think. Like, we have this idea of, like, pearly gates and a paradise behind it and all this stuff. But I think, like, the reality is like, I've said it, like, that we'll be able to, wherever we go next, we'll be able to keep going. Even if it's not us, even if we're somebody different, we'll still keep going. you know. And I think that there's beauty in that.
Yeah,
and I think
sure.
there's some, and personally, I think there's a fundamental truth in that, right? Even if it is purely scientific,
mm-hmm.
right? Matter is not broken down; it's not ever destroyed, so it's just changed, you know.
For sure. I mean, I think that is. I definitely think that there is like a humanistic element to it at the very end there. Of course, there's. I mean, going all the way to the ending, right? There's like constant. You know, the religious angle is never. Are stopped. You know.
Well, we talked about the sheriff, right? We talked about Raul Coley's.
Sheriff Hassan.
Hassan, yeah.
Yeah, of course. He dies praying. And the whole town of vampires die singing hymns, and it's like I think it's just one of those other like layers that like shows how individual you can take your death while being at peace with it, and where none of these angles are considered like a false angle. Except for Bev, of course, right? Who loses her faith at the end, probably never really had it, you know.
Yeah,
but
I think that's the point. Is those who preach the loudest oftentimes, you know.
Yep.
Are the ones who are doing them. I mean, even like Father Pruitt and Sarah, I think is her name.
The doctor.
No, Millie. Mildred. Yeah.
Millie,
Sarah's their daughter.
Sarah's her daughter, right? It comes out that even they had like an illegitimate child together who they both loved very much, and they both loved each other very much, but like it was right person, wrong time kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, just it's one of those tragedies that life throws at you, right?
For sure. I mean, his moving on here, even like Father Pruitt, Father John, Monsignor, whatever you want to.
Father Paul, whatever they call him.
Whatever you want to call him. One of my favorite parts of him as a character, besides the fact that he does feel very real as a priest, is that he is always portrayed as good despite it. And I think that, he does evil, of course, right?
Yeah.
But he's repentant, and he is always very honest about like his relationship or his attempted relationship with God. And I like that. I think a lot of times when a story like this, you have the priest that becomes disillusioned by the end. I think that's a very stereotypical thing. And I liked that, just again, coming from a personal angle, like it was refreshing to see his character by the end of it, like holding on to it, like almost rediscovering the purpose of the church and the priesthood in those final moments.
No, I agree. I like you said, like him being the road to hell being paved with good intentions as a character, and then him being just so like, it's not, he never lost faith, he just realized that he was doing his faith wrong.
It's almost like the ultimate devilish temptation, right? Is that that, and they say that all the time, even demons can quote scripture, all that bit. And he was clearly tempted to do evil and did it, and is portrayed in a very like theologically accurate way, I felt.
Well, and also in a very human way.
Absolutely, I mean,
the idea of you're a dementia-rattled old man, and suddenly you have the entirety of your life back.
Yeah.
You have what makes you again. Like, that, the idea of... Because you have to assume the show gives us info that he's been like this for many years, at least. Maybe not as bad as he was here at the end, but this has been kind of the track he's been on leading up to his big change and becoming young again. So to get that back, like it's a very, you can kind of square the logic of the character.
Oh, for sure.
Which
he even
obviously
he explains it even at the end. Yeah.
Well, his whole confession sequence, where he's basically just here's my origin story, is wonderful. It's
really cool.
it's
I
a
loved
very
the
good way to
Stations of the Cross.
yes.
Oh my god, that was so cool.
It's again, in terms of religious accuracy here, it takes explaining what is happening to a character and makes it work within the framework of what we're watching in every capacity. And I think that's good writing, you know?
For sure.
Yeah. And like again, we talk about it all the time, like the idea of like the biblical angels are not like fucking
for sure.
studs with wings. They're fucking terrifying orb monsters that just go, "Be not frightened, mortal."
Yeah. I mean, I thought that was, there's a lot of instances, right, where scripture is quoted for the advantage of evil. But that was one of those times where it's like, there is some solid points to be made here.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, man, like
you totally understand why he would come to that conclusion. Yeah. Totally understand.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So a miracle was given. Like it's the whole blood. It's like the whole blood thing, right?
Absolutely,
like the blood of Christ, all that shit. It's like this. All of it makes total sense. But you'd think maybe some of the other people would go, he can't go outside anymore. Is he a vampire?
Yeah, right.
That
was one of my other things. Is it's like
that was a piece of cognitive dissonance for me. Is like I can see Bev being like, okay, so like I follow you because you're the boss. She's very hierarchical in that. But like Sturge or Liza's parents, like none of them were like, that dude's a fucking vampire. Like,
I think it's one of those things where, like, within the universe of the show, you have to pretend nobody knows what vampires are. Like, kind of like in zombie movies where it's like a zombie raises from the dead and nobody's like, oh yeah, that's a zombie, right? You have to believe that in their world they've never heard of the concept before.
But no, zombies make sense. The difference is zombies make sense. If someone got sick and then died and then revived, and like totally like crazed, you'd think, oh man, this person is just really sick. Like and it's like going through like a weird rabies mutagen. Like the intense range is one of the symptoms. Like you wouldn't think, oh man, that's The Walking Dead, right?
I mean, maybe not the first time, but how many times have you watched a movie or a TV show where they're like, where it's obviously zombies and people are still like, what's going on? They got to learn what zombies are, how it works, how to kill them. Like, they had to learn it all as if they'd never heard of a zombie before. I think that's just a classic like horror issue,
So we mentioned,
I didn't.
That definitely stuck out to me, and I brought that up to Maggie. I was like, so like, what's going on in this world? Do they just not know? And I think that for me, it definitely the bell rang a bit, but the rest of everything was so good. I was able to be like, shut up, Bell, and I got it to quiet down.
I get that. I'm not saying that it like took away my show, but like there was just like, are they just not gonna?
Look, Bobby, as the person who much less has set me off about stuff, I get it.
Yeah.
Basically, if Alan says the cognitive dissonance wasn't that bad, we all have to write it off.
I mean, it's a pretty solid. If Bobby can be objectively correct about everything, I can be correct about cognitive dissonance. Okay, the writing off of it.
And if it doesn't, so unfortunately, Alan,
no,
and
fuck. So we've talked about
object and unstoppable force.
Which one's which? We don't need to get into that.
We've
talked about Bev a few times. I think we should go into a few of her moments because she's so awful.
She's
the villain of the show. She's the villain. Yeah.
I wrote down. I said this in the pre-show. Bev is 100% a red herring. Totally was wrong. I said that in like mid-episode 1 or something.
Really?
That was a really dumb idea of me to put and was proven wrong quite fast. But just the one scene I want to start with is, so Joe walks in and discovers Father Paul drinking the rest of that wine, which is great symbolism.
Yep.
You've got your really good. He succumbs to his vampiric ways and kills Joe. It's sad because the fact that this show
kinda.
True. The fact that this show made me feel bad for a drunkard who paralyzed a girl is a testament to how good the writing is in the show and how like believable these characters
I felt
are.
bad for that dude the entire time.
I didn't.
Bev killed that dude's dog, and I was so fucking angry.
Yes, that wasn't the scene I was going to go with, but when Bev walks in and discovers this, she calls Joe it repeatedly, just like the callous disregard for humanity. She's known this guy her entire life. It's such a simple thing, but I think it's truly effective in showing how terrible this person is, let alone the other terrible things she does, or her blatant hypocrisy of don't evangelize, proceeds to evangelize. Like,
that was one of my favorite parts of the whole show, by the way. The classroom scene.
Yeah,
it's so good, absolutely. But we had to highlight. So
angry. But again, I am not one who likes to like who gets a lot of catharsis from like watching somebody die. But man, her trying to bury her head in the sand and like only just to like,
yeah,
it's like you ruined this entire island. Like you Jonestown, an entire fucking island. Like,
I think,
you monster.
And obviously she's important because I think anybody who, let's be honest, anybody who goes to church regularly could probably point to at least one person who's just like her in their church, right? That's just the reality of it. And one of the greater messages here in the show in general ends up not being that God equals bad, right? Which a lot of shows like this do go down that route, right? Faith is bad.
Yeah.
But it sets itself squarely on the fact that extremism is bad.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
blind faith is bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that. I think that there's a lot that people can learn and that people can think about there. Especially people who are not religious. And I mean, the show is coming from the point of view of somebody who is no longer religious.
But someone who clearly understands it better than I think most.
He's a cradle Catholic. He grew up an altar boy. Like,
It really shows.
Yeah. Like, I mean, the scene with Riley's parents being like, when they're both turned and they're both like, it's all my blood. It's nobody else's blood. Like, we do not have to do this. We do not have to be them. We can fight it. I'm still me. You're still you. Like, that is a moment of like, there's been moments when, the Catholic Church has been wrong about things in a very big way, like the way that they've treated people, right? And them to be like, you can still be a good Catholic and be like, they're wrong to be killing people, and causing demonstrable harm. It's like there is that moment
for sure,
and like the idea of like of Bev just wanting the power, having as much power as she possibly could have in her small little town. Where she's like a cult, right?
Doesn't Aaron explicitly say that about power?
Riley's mom, I know, calls her out and says, "Oh, you're a bad." She says, "You're a bad person, and you're a bad Christian." Like,
why does it bother you so much that God loves my son as much as she loves you?
Which, of course, like I think that scene works because it's coming from her and not coming from someone who's not religious. I mean, Riley's parents are very much like kind of like the prototypical like we believe in God and we go to church on Sunday, but it's stronger that it's coming from them even than it would be from Aaron, I think, who it's established that she is going back to church just for the comfort of it, like the almost nostalgia of when she was younger. She kind of like finds God along the way. But yeah, Bev, terrible.
just the absolute, like, the only truly detestable character is Tech. Like, I didn't like Liza's parents.
Yeah.
Because like
they were just like one step below her, really.
Yeah, one dude's the mayor, so he's got power, and he's like so blindly like he just followed, like he like would just do whatever the person that helped him wanted him to do.
Yep.
Like, and then you know, the mom was just so blind, like, by that. I don't know, it bothered the shit out of me, like, because like again, I'm a fairly religious guy, I'm a spiritual at the very least, but like, god damn it, like, you gonna drink goddamn poison?
Yeah.
I ain't gonna do, like, nah, man.
That whole sequence in that church, seeing everyone seeing the people that make the choice to kill themselves with the poison, it's interesting, the characters that just go for it, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Like, for example, the other altar boy is just like, all right, well, down the hatch, here we go, let's have fun. Within that,
Yeah.
my narrative dissonance bell went off in that sequence, though.
Why?
With Hassan's kid.
Yeah.
We never see him take communion of any kind.
But we know he's going to church regularly.
Sure. I don't know. I did
think that as well. I did think that.
Okay, thank you.
When he drank the poison, my very first thought was, he's not going to get
dead.
back up. And this is going to be a big moment. And I wish it was that moment, because I actually think that him getting back up and kind of like proving to his dad that he, has, went whole hog into Christianity, despite the fact that at the end, he prays with his dad, whatever. Like, I think it all has its purpose, but I think that it could have served, the moment more if he didn't get back up. Everybody else was going to get back up anyway.
Yeah.
I think I agree, and I think it would have hurt so much more just knowing about Hassan's wife. Like,
exactly.
Like, that would have hit. But, like, at the same time, there is something really nice about them, like, meeting and him being, like, again, it's one of those things that, like, you, even if you don't necessarily fully believe, or maybe he did, Hassan's son did at the end, he believed, like, he went back to Islam. Like, there is this, like, it comes back when you return to it, it becomes yours. It's no longer your parents' religion; it's yours.
Yeah,
and like there is a certain, there's something to that. I
totally agree. Yeah. No, I agree, and there's this humanistic element to all of Flanagan's work that it probably would make it worth it to him and his style for him to come back so that his son could be reunited in faith with his dad, like by the end of the show. It would almost be like too dark for the style of the show for him to just like die in that moment. Like the show is really not a lot of like really dark horror. Obviously horror moments happen. So for that to like happen probably would have been a sharp turn.
It's scary because of how the people act.
Yeah.
Less of the actual, like, it's a vampire. Like,
isn't it funny how like almost non-scary the vampire is because of that, despite being a pretty creepy design, actually.
Yeah. He's got like he's weirdly Roman statuesque. Like, it's very interesting. Like, it's a well designed vampire. He's just not that. It's just the way that like Bev holds mass, essentially, right? Like, we didn't talk a lot about Hassan as a character, and they were basically we've hit the.
He's the fifth character that
you wouldn't say Millie isn't a important character?
I think she's so linked to Pruitt that like they kind of like, especially near the end as we see their relationship, I think they're tied together,
That's fair.
At what point did you realize that, like, she's definitely going to get all the way young?
Honestly, later than I probably should have.
Really?
Just to be totally upfront.
I noticed all of them were wearing old people makeup pretty early on. Like, these actors and actresses are definitely way younger than this.
Yeah.
And she looked like she had the heaviest on. I'm like, I bet
Mhm.
she's young as hell. I bet she's like gonna be like in her 20s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought that too. And like the first or second time you saw her, I was like, she has a lot. She's got old person makeup on. That's not
Yeah.
an old person.
Yeah.
And as it became super obvious that Father, that Hill
Yeah.
and Pruitt were the same person, I was like, oh, so she's a young actress. She's going to become younger over time. And the other characters became younger too in less obvious ways. But
Yeah. Oh, you mean like Riley's mom having her Spider-Man moment with her glasses?
yeah.
I genuinely laughed at that because I could not think of Spider-Man.
Yeah. She also does just look like obviously younger. Like everybody that is going to the church like regularly does look a little bit younger.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
yes.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Because I was going to change the topic.
I was going to go into Liza a little bit.
Oh, I was going to talk about Hassan. Let's talk about
which one
Liza.
we want to do. Okay, all right. So Liza, this girl.
I think her name is Lisa, actually.
Lisa, maybe. It's one of the two. So she's really the first miracle, the first very
Well, she's
obvious.
the first one that everybody knows.
Exactly. That's something's up in this area because there's no chance that this person should be standing, and everybody knows it. But that's not the moment of hers I want to talk about. I want to talk about her monologue with Joe.
That's her best moment. One of the best parts of the whole show.
You reached into time and stole from me. That coming from a 15-year-old girl, 16, however old she is.
High school.
It's a line that is such a more mature train of thought.
Yeah.
And utterly effective. I mean, when she said,
"I hate you," and I still do, but I forgive you.
Exactly. Being able to turn the other cheek.
Yeah.
It
is. I know, right?
In this show,
crazy. Well, just that whole sequence is that's probably my personal favorite monologue. I think. Yeah.
That's very good.
Yeah. That's my favorite line from the whole show.
That's fair.
You reached into time and stole from me.
I love it.
So good.
It's a very, very powerful scene. And I mean, I think that what's great about it is that if you didn't empathize with Joe before that, you almost surely did after that. Because, he's someone who's done something wrong almost to an extreme that most people, can't quite feel. But I think everybody has been through those moments where, they are a little extra down on themselves over something that they might have done. And I think a lot of times people wish that the other person would just say something like that. And the reality is that just doesn't happen very often, And so the catharsis that you're feeling for Joe, that she would come up and say those things, and that he is at, then taking those steps to better himself. And I mean, it all culminates in the reason why you feel so bad when Joe is killed is because that he's on the mend. Even though, people say in the show, I think maybe just Bev, that he was totally lost. He was never going to get better. He clearly was going to get better. He probably would have been productive. I mean, he was going to be a good person, probably. It was all there.
Yeah, him and Riley have the conversation about, does it ever get better for people like us?
Yeah.
And Riley goes, I don't know, but we just keep going. Yeah. And there is that and he seems to take that with a lot of comfort, and I don't know, if I can, God damn it, Joe, you deserve so much, so better. That one hurt. That one stung. Because you wanted him, the dude who played him was so good too,
incredible job. Yeah. On the topic of favorite monologues, I'm gonna segue us into Sheriff Hassan here. My favorite monologue is when he's talking to his son about the purpose of God, basically, right? What it really means. Because there's a lot of, Islam, of course, is the sister faith, right, to Catholicism. And I've always felt a lot of connection to that just from the jump. And so his entire conversation with his son about not only about finding God, something that, he fully believes they already have, but his entire bit about God choosing who lives and who dies, basically choosing miracles.
It can't work like that.
It can't work it doesn't work like that. That's not what God is. Yeah. And I love that because like I totally feel that way. I think that most people that hold faith feel that way, and that is a common argument against faith. How can a good God exist in a cruel world? That's the argument. And I love how succinct and passionate he is giving the defense to God despite the evil of the world.
Yeah.
That's my favorite monologue.
Because again, it's something that was mentioned here. Like, how can we connect these?
Yep.
And the reality is like, they can't be. Like, it can't be. If there is a God, that can't be how God works. Because if there there is what is it? There's the Futurama quote, right? If you do a good where Bender meets God. If you do a really good job, people doubt if you even exist at all. It's like, I quoted that for a theology paper in college once. I got an A. But there is this the idea, and it's so well done because he gets so mad at what cancer that cancer does to somebody, so good. I agree. That's all I got. And I've only ever seen Rahul Kohli, the guy who plays him.
Mm-hmm.
I only ever saw him. He was this YouTube channel Funhouse.
Mm-hmm.
He was on there a lot. He would do it a lot, and he's a very funny dude. And so seeing him in a very dramatic role, and him hitting it so hard it was so good. It was so good to see him do it. So
this is the second thing that I've seen him in. The first being Bly Manor. And I follow him on socials, and he is very silly. He's very funny. He seems like just a stand-up normal guy. And in Bly, it is also a very serious role. Sometimes humorous in a dry way. But he has a lot of long conversations in that one also about the meaning of death, and that Bly kind of goes into that as well. And I mean, he's just a stand-up actor. I think he's really, really great, and I can't wait to see him in more stuff after this.
I would love to see him leading something.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think a big thing for me with Hassan is the way... So the other kind of big factor we haven't talked about a little bit with his whole character, I mean, him and Bev clash almost immediately from the moment you see them on the screen together.
And it's not his fault either.
No, not at all. I mean, Bev's a blatant Islamophobe. There's no way around that. She calls him... she call him a terrorist directly near the end? Yeah. And I mean, of course... So that, obviously, the peak of their problems or their conflict is, I mean, when she shoots him and effectively kills him.
Yeah.
But I think the real peak is their discussion in the classroom. We've talked about it a bit here, but this just theological back and forth between them is, again, one of the just highlights of the entire show. Seeing him just walk her through. He literally just puts down the trap card and just lets her keep coming, and then just springs that on her perfectly.
Oh yeah.
With how he sets up the idea of, well, you wouldn't want the Quran in this school, would you? Yeah. And it's really,
and also
really well done.
Explaining why the Quran isn't fucking scary either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's actually apples to apples, less fucking violent and scary than the Bible.
Yeah.
None of the Old Testament stuff's in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I took 2 classes theming around the history of the modern Middle East. Fascinating class, by the way, and history of Islam. So I've always... That was one of my more interesting things in college. So I did not go to a private university. That was very much so...
Backstory, we went to Catholic university.
Yeah. That's where me and Corwin that was in college.
I I took those classes I want to say sophomore and junior year, so I was 21-ish when I took them.
Sure.
And I wouldn't say I was at a weird place in terms of faith by any means, but I am not nearly
that's the age.
as much of a practicing Catholic as I once was,
Sure.
and especially so then. And learning about other religions is frankly a really interesting way to, in a roundabout way, find your way back to your own belief system, because you get a better perspective on what it is that makes religion. And again, I think that kind of ties into Hassan being like, I have no qualms with my son reading the Bible. I want him to.
Yeah.
It'd be great for him to understand this. Like, it's just a really... You kind of knew that scene was probably going to happen from the moment you see Bev and the Islamic sheriff. Like, that there's going to be a conflict given how much of just a heathen, frankly, Bev is.
And he practices at this point, right? You've seen him praying?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, you have.
That
was...
have.
I want to say you see it in the first episode explicitly that they go through their prayer routine. I want to say.
Yeah. It's established pretty quickly that he's practicing Islam.
Yeah.
I think that it's important. I think it's easy to forget that in that scene, when he's talking about his son learning from the Bible, he seems like he's very open to it. But then later on, as his son is potentially making the decision to convert, I mean, he has the same reaction that I think most parents would have, which is like, I don't think so.
Yep.
But he also lets him do it.
Yeah. He just makes it very well known how he feels about it.
He said he's not comfortable with it yet.
Yeah.
Which fair, right? Like,
for sure.
He found his faith when his wife was dying, right? Like, so his faith is important to him in that way. Like,
yeah, it keeps him connected to his wife, and I mean his son recognizes that, calls it out even, like, but he's great. I mean, I think he's a very empathetic character. In a lot of ways.
Is there anybody else you want to address, or you're just bad boy?
Nothing comes to mind for me.
I think we're ready to score this bad boy.
Let's fucking score this bad boy. I'm gonna start with Alan.
Ooh.
I came into this with a 4.5.
Ooh.
It's a 5 out of 5 for me. I think after speaking on this a bit more and thinking through it more, I think this show is very intelligently written to have a perspective that is, I think, one of the most interesting looks on religion I've seen in modern media, because it takes the approach of walking you through the mindset of a few different ranges of faith, and then also that same kind of range of people who are somewhere between totally agnostic and kind of more spiritual but not religious. I think the acting in this show is wonderful. The writing is really, succinct. I mean, I mentioned earlier that the monologues kind of didn't work for me. That's where the half-point loss came from, frankly, originally, was that I got a little tired of them. But I think just talking through them more, I can forgive my personal annoyance with them, to say that this is a 5 out of 5 for me. Bobby, I'm going to pass it to you.
I'm going to give 2 scores for this. Subjectively, based off of me, myself, and I, this movie is a 5 out of 5. But I am incredibly biased, being a good Catholic boy growing up in a small town full of Catholics. So this movie spoke to me in a way that, frankly, it's just biased, right? Objectively, it's probably a 4.5 out of 5. There are some bits where it drags, some bits where it doesn't work, some plot points that don't exactly go there, and in characters who become incredibly important are like gone throughout the majority of the show. and did not necessarily need to be. Like Sturge is there the entire time, but Sturge is not anybody until like the second half of the last episode. So like, and he looks the same as Joe, so I got them confused a lot.
I did actually have that happen like once or twice. I'm like, wait, aren't you? Oh, that's Sturge.
Yeah.
So subjectively 5 easily. Yeah, this movie was very emotionally relevant to me, but objectively it's a 4. So actually 4.5 is probably the real score that we. Corbin.
So I mean, my feelings are very similar to Bobby's in a way. I do think that there are a couple of things that I wish were explored. Like, one of the things that I wrote down notes of like several times was they kept talking about the oil spill, the spill. And I was waiting for that to turn into something a little bit more than just another notch on Bev Keene's evil. And it simply never did. Like, I'll be honest, I knew in advance that this was a vampire story. I was spoiled. I'm on social media all day for the podcast, and I saw fan posters of a vampire on it. I knew. And so my thought was, when they kept talking about the spill and the mayor seemed to be in on it, I was like, oh, like, maybe the spill is when the vampires came. Like, maybe there's some, like, maybe that's code for something. Turned out to be nothing. I mean, subjectively, this show spoke to me a lot, you know? I felt personally moved by several of the monologues, you know, close to tears even. I felt closer to my own faith by the end of the show. It's hard for me not to give it a 5. I do think that there are some downsides. I don't think that they're enough for half a point.
All right.
I'm gonna go for it. 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be the cynic today.
There you go.
Also.
The cynic, 4.5.
14.5 out of 15. Dog shit.
Terrible. If it's not 3 5s, it couldn't possibly be essential.
Yeah.
Or could it? Alan?
This was the one where I wish you didn't pick me first.
This is hard.
It's hard.
My mind is telling me I should say yes.
But your body.
But I'm trying to think through the ramifications of calling this essential in terms of what that actually means to other media. We recently watched Prince of Darkness, and Corbin said he wants more techno faith.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of want more like purely vampiric religious horror in a weird way, because I said this before you were. Just give me a second.
Alan just needs to watch more vampire movies.
Yeah.
Well, but my thing. So I did not know that I just didn't know that there were going to be as much connections to those two things, and I want more of it. I hope that more comes of it. I don't think there will be, though.
Okay.
So all that being said, I think I'm going to say no. But it's the hardest no I've said on the show to date.
So it's really the softest no you've said on the show to date.
Yeah. The hardest for him to say. The softest no.
Exactly. Hardest. It's the hardest for me to say no. I don't think so.
The most
but
difficult you could be another way of saying that.
It's sure. However you want to.
There's any number of other ways we'd want to.
Bounce off me and sticks to Corbin.
That's fine. That's fine because I am ready. So I'm gonna say yes, and here's why. Despite I think first of all, if you are religious at all, this is an easy yes, because especially if you're Catholic, because it's honestly difficult to find media, especially horror, that is this accurate while remaining in the end pro-Catholic. I think that alone kind of makes it essential for people of that are shared religion. But I think even just for horror, taking that out of it, it's a yes, and here's why. Mike Flanagan is one of the premier writer-directors of the modern age, right? Mm. He is up there with Ari Aster and Eggers and these other like big names that are kind of on the come up, this next generation of horror, right? And the elements that are really, really making Flanagan famous now are these humanistic horror series with drama first. This is his third one, and it's easily the best one, I think. I've seen all of them. I think this one is just better than the other two. And so for me, it's a yes, because I think that this is going to be a turning point for his career. I think that, Haunting of Hill House really like skyrocketed him in popularity. There's a chance that this is the apex, and I think that makes it essential.
Okay. I think you're right. So I'm gonna also say yes. I think this show really does hit a humanistic chord that is like that horror movies try to do, right? It's even popcorn, like they try to hit a chord to like get into our more base emotions, like, and I think this show really does that for me, and I think generally speaking, it'll do it for most people. I mentioned friend of the show Jack every now and again. This was something that he suggested to me, and that I needed to watch it. His words were, "You're gonna sit down and you just dedicate 8 hours because you're not gonna want to turn it off." And I didn't. So I agree that like it's just something that's very well done, and if Mike Flanagan is going to continue on his road to popularity, this will be one of those movies that they'll sit as a high watermark for him. So yeah, I hella agree, or show. So it is essential. Yeah.
There you go. Sorry, Alan. I guess you were the cynic.
Yeah.
Speaking of Cynic Trek, where can we find you guys? Where are you guys at? What have you guys been up to?
Alan, let's just keep the rotation the same.
All right. You can find me at a seal punter just about anywhere, where I post on Instagram that I was in the gym at 5:45 in the morning.
Like a sociopath.
Yeah, hey man, gotta hit the work. I can't do the workout after work. I just can't. I get home. I just can't. I gotta do it in the morning so that it's done. But other than that, I mean, it's not too much different. I've been listening to Dune on my way into work, because it's a great book, and I have never listened to / read it before. And it's probably one of the bigger holes in my like nerdiness that I've never filled. So working on that, and I'm just trucking through Sekiro.
Ooh.
Shadows die twice.
Shadows do die twice. That is correct.
I've heard they've died at least 2 times. Yes.
I've died more than 2 times. That game is so
you have to start
good.
Over?
It kinda. That's kind of like the whole thing with them. I beat the Guardian Ape first try today. I was pretty proud of that. For anybody who's actually played that game, you understand that's a tall order. To be fair, I have beat this game like 3 times, so this is not my first playthrough by any means.
So you didn't really beat him your first try.
Well, first try on this playthrough, which is still a decent thing. It's pretty alright.
Nah, man. If you can't beat the Nameless King on your first try, first play, you're not even.
I 100% did not beat the Nameless King the first time.
A TikTok where somebody did that. They were flipping their lid.
Honestly, that's
so cool.
Genuinely impressive. Yeah. Like, that boss is a son of a bitch, especially because you don't know what you're getting into. Mm-hmm. Like, the unknown factors. Yeah.
Him and Gale are like the 2 hardest bosses in all the Souls games.
Gale is such a good boss, man. I could do a whole podcast just talking about how good of a boss that is.
Prove it.
Easy. Don't tempt me. Bobby,
Yeah.
where can we find you?
Oh, you can find me, as you can see, at twitch.tv/theredweenie. All of my relevant socials are there. I basically use it as a Linktree. It's great. I like it. It's pretty cool. It's pretty sick. I said last week that I finished up doing a musical. It's great. Had a lot of fun. We did a really good job. Now I've got time, and I will be streaming at least the once a week, probably more. Elden Ring, there's going to be a network test coming out soon, so I'll be streaming that for sure.
Did you get in?
It's open. There's going to be an open network test.
No, it's not.
There's going to be an open network test.
Bobby,
go ahead. Use Google right now.
Don't tell me these things.
It's probably closed like this weekend and then open next weekend. Like,
Yeah,
that's the stuff that they do.
Yeah, they're already releasing footage of the closed stuff.
Yeah, Skilla put up like a half-hour video about Elden Ring like yesterday.
Yeah.
Alan's looking it up right now because he's like, I didn't know I get to play Elden Ring.
So yeah, I'll probably be doing that.
Nice.
Yeah. How about you, Corbin?
Yeah, so you can find me anywhere at Corbangering. If you follow my personal Twitter in the last week, you may have seen that I failed an 8-day hobby streak. I was doing really well, and so a hobby streak is where you just every day try to do something related to your hobby. And your hobby, in this case, is supposed to mean something that is creative and maybe has some sort of backlog element to it, right? And I broke it because I had to watch Midnight Mass for the show, and my daughter has been sleeping not so great because she was sick, and so I was already up until like 2 a.m. watching this show, so there just wasn't any time to paint models. But I'm back on it. Watched Spider-Man last night, magnetized some guys. It was great. Besides that, I have been playing Halo and Destiny, normal stuff. And I have been reading the Ichabod. I've been listening to the Ichabod. The Ichabod is a one-off novel from J.K. Rowling. It's just like a fairy tale, kinda. It's really cool. It's very child-friendly. Like, it feels like the age group that, like, the second or third Harry Potter book was written for. It's cool. The audiobook is Stephen Fry, so, it's well done. But that's me. You can find the podcast anywhere at Essential Scares. We're still active on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, despite us not having daily content drops anymore. That will be coming back to you as we get nearer to Christmas. So keep an eye out. But I think that closes us out this week, guys. This was quite an episode. Maybe our deepest episode so far.
For sure. 100%.
If you've been listening for a while, I'm sure you know more about us now than you did prior. And if this was your first episode, we don't usually go this hard. In fact, next week we're watching Thanksgiving.
What a great thing of mouthwash that'll be.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you like the show, share it with your friends, share it with your family. Alan, you had something to say?
I was going to predict Bobby's score
for
on Thanksgiving.
Okay,
yep.
Go for it.
Bobby, if I remember correctly, you always say the worst place to be is a 2 out of 5. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes.
You're going to give Thanksgiving a 1.5 and say how much you love it.
Maybe. There's only one way to find out.
Listen in.
Next week on Essential Scares.
5 out of 5. 5 out of 5.
Thank you, Alan and Bobby. I have been your host, Corbin, and this has been Essential Scares.
Let us proclaim that breakdown, baby.